So let me tell you, Drew, what is bothering me, and I shouldn't be bothered about this. So I'm trying to get out of my feelings. So I have my little routine that I'm doing every day, and I work out, and then I watch television while I'm working out. That's how I get, I multitask.
Yeah.
So I go to Amazon Prime because I've been watching Bosch, and at the top of the screen is this like Black History moments, scroll of like shows, Selma, Marshall, it's a bunch of shows. And initially I'm like, yay. But then I'm like, okay, who's this for? And so let me just shut up because we should be happy, right? That they are not no longer, that they're no longer relegating Black History to February. That
Amen.
Netflix has a whole thing. I was on Hulu. Like they all have now like social justice and Black history, and they have and they're trending. I was not happy that The Help was trending this weekend. The Help should not be trending, white people. That is not the movie to watch if you want to get
Right.
Black wokeness. Please stop. But I think we should be happy about some of the changes. Maybe the kente cloth that we saw in Congress. Should we be happy, or should we be like, what? Why are y'all just now doing this?
Right. A friend of mine sent me this thing, Karen, where it was a cartoon of two black women sitting together, and they were writing out their Black Lives Matter protest signs. And the one woman's phone kept going off, and she said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Those are just my white co-workers asking me how I am because they just found out that racism exists." She was like, "It's fine." Right. And so, so I had to laugh because it was funny, but I also had to think. I also am thinking about, because I live in corporate spaces, and
Yes.
that's sort of where I've spent most of my time. And you can be an activist and be out here working for the cause inside of any space that you're in. If you are in the religious system, you can still be advocating and being an activist for that. If you're in the corporate space, you can still do that or whatever. You gotta, grow where you're planted, make the magic happen where you are. But I was thinking about how much of this shit is performative, right? Like how much of the kneeling and taking a knee, how much of the signs saying Black Lives Matter, how much of that is actually real and is a sign of a sea change? How much of it is performative? Because let's just be real about it, that we have seen a lot of stops and a lot of starts when it comes to people saying it's time to get serious about race in America, right? And I have to say, this is a company that has made some real, has made some real advances in terms of who they were in as it relates to black people and who they're trying to be. And that's JP Morgan Chase. And I saw the CEO, Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase, someone who literally makes markets by the things that he says and the things that he does, taking a knee, right? And I thought, if this is real, it could be incredible, right? Like that white men at these real pressure points of power now all of a sudden have some sort of rationalization or recognition that their experience in life is not the same as the experience in life of black people in this country. I know they had known that already, but now maybe they have a more intimate understanding of it, or maybe it's on their television screens and now they're like being faced with it, or people are knocking out windows and branches and maybe it's like, oh, the people have my attention now. I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that people's attention has been gotten, right?
Okay, so let's ask this question, because as I'm watching I'm Not Your Negro, because again, I was going to go watch Bosch because that's what I watch. I watch an episode every day and as I'm working out. I saw something called Salute, which I had never seen before, which is about 1973, the Olympics that were held in Mexico. Tommy Smith, John Carlos stood on the podium. John Carlos came in third. He won the bronze. Tommy Smith won the gold, and they put a black fist in the air. And as I was watching, I'm starting to watch this documentary unfold. The guy that came in second, his name was Peter, begins with a last name begins with an N. He was from Australia. And, they start to tell the story about the Aborigines there and what was going on there. And I didn't know that they had snatched the kids up from their houses to be raised by white folk, like that history. So I was like, okay, I want to be mad, but Amazon, thank you, because I'm learning. And then I'm wondering, too, because I'm 50 something. And I imagine John Carlos and them are in their 70s, right? For the people who are in their 70s and 80s who lived John's, all of them, the John Lewis and others, as they are watching what's happening, what are they feeling? Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, they lived through something, watched, Brown versus Board of Ed, watched all these civil rights laws be passed, and then to be right back here 50 years later, watched all of the assassinations. They lived through it. They lived through it to be right back here. I remember being in the 5th grade watching Roots. So all the people right now, there was the governor of Georgia, or of Texas, said, I didn't realize until I saw George Floyd that this was so bad. And I'm like, in your town, in your state, a man was dragged behind a truck by racists until his head fell off. Like, James Byrd was in your state. Like, what are you talking about? So it's like, do we have selective amnesia? And should we be harsh on people who willfully ran away from? I had to watch Roots in the 5th grade and do a report. Shout out to Mrs. Johnson. She made the whole class. And my dad, I mentioned before, made me watch Eye on the Prize. So I did not, even though I grew up in a time when it wasn't a whole lot, we had Fight the Power, of course, Public Enemy. There was F the Police and the NWA and the Cop Killer with Ice-T, who is now is now acceptable. I'm just wondering. Like, do we give people a break for their amnesia? Do we give them a break for their ignorance? And if they're trying, if Jamie Dimon is trying, can we force him to make this permanent? Can we force this to go beyond a photo op or performative, kente cloth wearing, I'm going to be like Mitt Romney and say Black Lives Matter? Mitt Romney was out there marching. And I said, is this a moment or a movement? Are we in a certain time? Is this permanent or is it performative? I don't know.
I don't know either, Karen, but what I do know is that we have the power to remind people. We have the power to remind people. So when anti-Black legislation comes up, we need to be posting those pictures of those congressional leaders, not after the vote, but before the votes, and to say, is this still you? Is this still you?
Like that.
Is this you, Mitt Romney, at Black Lives Matter? Do Black lives really matter when it comes to redlining? Do Black lives really matter when it comes to rewriting these congressional districts? Is this you, J.P. Morgan Chase, when it comes to your numbers just came out on your home loans to African Americans? Your numbers just came out in terms of your small business loans. Your numbers just came out in terms of where you stand on these things. Is this still you? Do Black lives still matter? Do Black lives matter in your boardroom and not just on Main Street? Like, I feel like that we have the power to remind people, because one of the things that I love about guerrilla crisis management, some of the stuff that I did for companies that will go unnamed, is that one of the things that we loved to do was we loved to get either politicians, if we were really trying to go after a specific piece of legislation, or if we were trying to go after a specific change inside of an organization, we love to have video or to have some public statement about a stance for a politician. Because what we would do then, or a leader or an executive, is run that right back to their people and say, hey, we just want to make sure that this is still you. This is where you still stand. And by the way, we're going to ask you first if this is where you still stand, and then we're going to send this clip to the Washington Post and see if they can get you to answer it if we can.
Well, right? Newspapers are on their asses, as well as newsrooms across America are being confronted with journalists who are saying you've been silencing us all of these years. The New York Times op-ed editor had to resign because he ran that horrible ass Tom Cotton op-ed. And it's not about freedom of speech. It's about your ideals. All of these outlets have a foundation, and truth should be at the top of the food chain in terms of what they put out. But there is also a love towards truth and freedom and justice. Yeah. And to put that op-ed out with Tom Cotton talking about, supporting the militarization of our country, that was a bad look. But on that same editorial board, on that same op-ed, is Michelle Alexander, who wrote a piece today in the New York Times in that very same space. The piece is entitled "America, This Is Your Chance. We must get it right this time or risk losing our democracy." You know Michelle Alexander because she wrote, of course, the New Jim Crow. And in her piece, she breaks down. She says, in part, we find ourselves here for the same reasons a civil war tore our nation apart more than 100 years ago. Too many citizens prefer to cling to brutal and unjust systems than to give up political power. The perceived benefits of white supremacy in an exploitive economic system. If we do not learn the lessons of history and choose a radically different path forward, we may lose our last chance at creating a truly inclusive, egalitarian democracy. Now, I know that a lot of people that don't want there to be a truly equal, egalitarian democracy. I know there are a lot of people out there that like their privilege, that love being in a position to tell people what to do and to, sit on a perch and look down on folk and keep their knee on folks' necks. But I've said this many times, this country will not continue to exist if we don't get this thing right.
Yeah. Listen, we're already seeing that, Karen. I mean, America made the decision to essentially elect a racist game show host to the highest office in the land. I said that. Karen Hunter's show did not say that.
Oh, I said it. Yeah, Carnival Barker. Yeah, I said it. I co-sign that. Continue.
And when you make those types of decisions, America, if you continue down this racist path, you are going to have a horrible response to a global pandemic where the United States is now the part of the world that has had the most deaths because the government did not do what it was supposed to do. You're going to have 30 million people unemployed in this country. You're going to have essentially uprising in the streets of every state in the union. This is what bad leadership looks like. This is what racism in America and those chickens coming home to roost is beginning to look like. And if you think this is bad, maybe hurricane season is coming, right? Like, if you think this is bad, there are all of these other things that are in the path of being on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of righteousness and the wrong side of humanity and the wrong side of equality. There's only but so long that this can play out unchecked the way it does. It's gonna impact what goes on in these streets. Because listen, people want to say that it's riots, and I've said this before, that you can't tell protesters how to protest, right? This is an uprising. And 400 years, there was violence against black bodies. It was routine. It's been routine. It's been customary. And an individual's body is their individual property, right? And so you can't talk to me about property damage, storefronts, windows being burst or graffiti on buildings or cars being set on fire. You can't talk to me about property damage if you can't talk to me about the lack of restitution that Black Americans have had for the property damage of our bodies, our souls, our history, our lives in this country. So you can call it a riot. I'm going to call it an uprising, right? Because the people are tired.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I'm thinking, because I'm getting so many different calls from so many different spaces right now of people, white folk needing to, they want to. And so this is my struggle. I don't want to denigrate somebody for trying, but at the same time, I'm like, where have you been? So I'm holding the where have you been back because, listen, there's an opportunity here to get some ish done. We got to get some ish done. So that requires a lot of us to not be in our feelings. So when they come to you, I was like, I'm saying white people in corporate America, stop coming to the black people on the job asking them anything. That's another form of terrorism. Stop doing that. But if you're in a position of power and you look around and you don't have any blacks on your board, and I'm not talking about blocks, I'm talking about black people, because here's what they do. They put comfortable black people in those seats, people that they can golf with, people that they like to dine with, people that are, on the same socioeconomic stratus. The magical Negro, so to speak. And that magical Negro may be wearing a mask, or that magical Negro, like Terry Crews, might have bought into this notion that I am somehow magical, or Ben Carson, or Candace Owens, who was doing it for Strange Things for Change. They may have actually bought into the notion that I'm magical and special.
Mm-hmm. I'm special.
But you're never getting the truth, right? So we have layers of black leadership in many corporations, and they're there, but they don't challenge power. Because when you challenge power, there's usually a consequence. I know. I've been fired. I've been shut out. I've been blacklisted. So I know what that looks like. I know that, and I was like, well, don't y'all want to know? Oh, you asked me. You ain't really want me to tell you the truth. All right. So I learned early that telling the truth to power usually means that you lose your livelihood. So you either have to figure out how to create your own livelihood without them, independent of them, or you're going to always be kowtowing with, so if you want to be on TV, what you got to do that TV talk. You know what I'm saying, Drew? You have to do the TV talk the way they want you to do it. You can't go off script. And so I always question people who rise up. I always question their allegiance. I always question if you're Egyptian, but you don't identify with being black, because it's more expedient for you to not be black. Or if you're black, you may go hard, because they do two things. They'll give you the circus, the caricature of us, the housewives and the black inks and the love and hip hops, things that they're comfortable with. Again, the hip hop, they'll elevate our hip hop stars because they're comfortable seeing us look like that, with the gold fronts and the big booties and doing the splits on the couch during a freaking graduation. They like that, the nails and the popping and all. They love that because that makes them feel superior. And they also love the black people who can affect the whole, the whole black thing. I mean, the whole white thing, and do that and make them feel comfortable and give them that. What they don't like are free black people. And I'm going to challenge America right now, because I don't think you've really seen, especially if you're in corporate America, a truly free black person. So it disturbs you when you run into one. You don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do with that. So you either capitulate and angrily, I'm going to get you later, because they always come back for you, or you change because that's the right thing to do, because nobody means you any harm. We just want our own space. I'm not trying to take food off your table. I'm just tired of you taking food off of mine. And it's just that simple. It's math. 866-801-8255. So I'm curious about the people who are in these positions, these black folk, and we're going to talk to a few today, who are in positions of power in white corporations, and how you navigate that now, because you got all of the power right now. You really willing to show your freedom.
And two, there's a responsibility to do it now that's different than it's ever been. I think there's always been a responsibility to do it, but now the difference between this being a moment and it being a movement is black folks staying the course, is black folks keeping gasoline on this proverbial fire under the ass of the American moral stance, right? And that means showing up in and asking the hard questions in every space that you enter. That means asking the hard questions in your household. How do we support this, right? What does our support of this look like? Are we just watching it on the news? Are we out there with a sign? Are we writing a check to the folks are we amplifying the movement on our social spaces? Because we have all manner of different types of axes of power, right?
Yes.
Inside of these organizations, I'm convinced, Karen, because I've been that black executive inside of a corporation who had a lot to say, and who said those things unapologetically. And I've been in organizations that were open to it and could handle it, and I've been in organizations that were not open to it and could not handle it, right? And what I definitely can say is that in those spaces, you need somebody who is independent. One of the things that I can say about my last role is that we had an independent advisory council, folks who were out there picketing out in the streets telling us that we were not getting it right. We invited them in and said, help us figure it out. We didn't invite in the people who said, y'all not that bad. Just buy a table at this next gala, and y'all really won't be that bad. Because there's some black folks and organizations that will let you do that, right? I know because I've written those checks and I've taken those checks out of the budget before. But you got some folks out there who what you need to do is go get those folks who are standing outside with that bullhorn and that picket sign in front of your building and get that person and get those people to come in. And if your company's not doing that, and Clay says this better than anybody I've ever heard say it, and it changed the way I thought. And I don't get a whole lot of new thought process changes at 43, but it changed the way I thought, is that when the gay community had a problem, they did not go out and get Ellen. They went out and got GLAAD. They went out and got the Human Rights Campaign. And we have got to stop allowing corporations and whatever modicum of voice or power we have inside those corporations to stop going out and get one shiny black person to fix the problem. One shiny black person cannot fix the problems that you have inside that organization. You need a whole lot of black folks from different backgrounds. You need everybody goes hard because Clay and I, we come to the same conclusions, but we came from very different paths.
That's right.
You need somebody who came from this path, who came from that path,
right.
so you can have a clearer view. One shiny black person can't give you the view of all the black people inside that organization or all of your black customers.
And it's inherently racist to think that that's the case, as if y'all are monolithic. Stop it. We're not lab experiments.
Right.
We're human beings, just like you. We got the same wants and desires. Just stop it.